Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. We believe that dads matter. That's why this show is for you. So gear up, dads. Get ready. It's time to start climbing. Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. Our guest today is Drew Manning. Drew is also known as Fit to Fat to Fit. He is a fitness trainer who gained over 60 pounds twice on purpose to better empathize with his clients and understand their struggles. So Drew, we are very excited to have you. Welcome to the show, man.
I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
Yeah, it's I'm really excited. Obviously your story is pretty crazy, intentionally gaining all that weight twice. So let's level set real quick though, just for the audience. Tell us a little bit about who Drew is, and you've been a dad obviously for a little while. Tell us about that and your family, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, all from the same mom and dad. I have 8 boys and 3 girls, and we all grew up playing sports. I grew up most of my life in Southern California, but I've lived all over. Lived in Virginia, Chicago, Utah, Illinois. I live in Hawaii currently. I lived in Brazil for 2 years, actually, when I was 19. Playing sports my whole life really helped me develop this sense of love for being in shape, staying in shape, playing football, American football, and wrestling since I was a little kid. And so that was a really big part of my life, fitness and health. Just because I remember watching, growing up in the 80s, watching movies like Conan and Predator, and just thought that was the coolest thing to be strong, and and I saw my older brothers play football. Exactly, those were classic movies that really shaped my mindset around health and fitness and wanting to be strong. And then I saw my older brothers play football and wrestle, and they were pretty good. And then I kind of excelled at those sports as well. And so for me, health and fitness is something that kind of came pretty easily for me. It's always been a passion of mine, and it didn't become my career until around 2009. I was married at the time, and I got married in 2005, by the way. And I have 2 girls that are 12 and 14. I was married for 10 years. I'm divorced. So I'm sure we can dive into all of that, but I got a degree in business management, and then was working as a financial analyst, and then did a complete 180 into the medical field. And then 2008, 2009 happened, the economy tanked, and I had to I couldn't get a job to save my life. And so at this time I was really trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to support my family? We just got pregnant for the first time. And so I was doing whatever it took, because I could get interviews all day because of my resume, but the economy was so terrible, I just couldn't get a job offer, right? And so I was doing manual labor jobs like construction just to pay the bills. And I was like, you know what am I passionate about? Health and fitness has always been something I'm interested in. So I decided to become certified as a personal trainer. And I did. And I started taking on clients on the side. And then this idea of Fit to Fat to Fit just kind of came out of nowhere, because I was thinking of ideas, how can I make a bigger impact? And actually what happened was, a lot of people don't know this story, but I was training my brother-in-law at the time, who wanted me to help him lose weight. And I would get so frustrated with him, because I would see him at family events, and he'd be eating all the delicious foods and stuff. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? I thought I thought I was helping you lose weight, and here you are at this family event, eating all the food. And he's like, well, I don't, I still want to eat the food. And I'm like, I remember just being frustrated. I would totally judge him, be like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you just have discipline and willpower and just put the junk food down, and just stop eating it, right? Because for me, in my mind, it just seems so simple. Dude, if you just stop eating junk food and you go to the gym, it's not that hard. You just do it, and then you'll lose the weight. And he would tell me, he's like, Drew, you don't understand how hard it is for me, or for people like me, because for you, it's always been easy. And I kind of took that to heart. I'm like, you know what? He's right. I don't understand why it's hard for people, because I used to be a very judgmental person growing up. And so I was thinking of ideas of how I could gain a better understanding. And then boom, this idea of getting fat on purpose, I know it sounds crazy, entered my mind, and the rest is history.
That's it's pretty funny to just hear it out loud in that way. It's just put fat on purpose. So thanks for giving us your background there, and just being honest too about like how you saw things. And I'll be honest as well, like that I kind of struggle with that. So I'm really excited to kind of learn from you on how it changed your mindset going through this, because I could probably use a
Mm,
dose of that myself. So um that was kind of your background getting into it. So let's dive into that journey. So like, when did you like
yeah.
pull the trigger on, hey, let's go ahead and start gaining the weight, and so I can start understanding people, and like what was that whole process? Because to me it just seems like so insane, you know?
Yeah, so what's funny is my wife was actually pregnant at the time, and she was, like, very supportive of my journey, and she's like, "So you're telling me we're gonna have junk food in the house, like, while I'm pregnant?" She's like, "Awesome, you should totally do it." So, she was in full support of me doing this fit to fat journey, as she was pregnant at the time. And so this was around 2011, and just to give you guys a little bit of background as well, like, I didn't have a marketing strategy. I didn't have, like, media connections. I was working at this time in the medical field, just kinda doing whatever it took to support my family, and I was like, "Let me find out how to start a website. Let me find out how to start a YouTube channel." Back in 2011, social media was, there was, like, Facebook and YouTube, and that's pretty much it. There was no, like, live streaming or TikTok or,
Yeah.
Insta stories. There was none of that, and so,
There weren't really
you know
podcasts.
yeah, there were a few podcasts, but, like, it wasn't mainstream yet, right?
Right.
So, like, I just, came up with this idea, like, "Hey, 6 months, I'm gonna stop exercising, I'm gonna eat a standard American diet, and I'm gonna document my journey as best I can." So I created my website on Squarespace, right? Didn't really know what I was doing, and just put it like an update once a week on my picture of what I looked like at my weigh-in. I would do a weigh-in at the end of each week. And before you know it, this story kind of went viral. Like, after a few months of me just like posting about it, like, eventually, like, some other bloggers, that's the thing that was popular back then, or blogs, like fitness bloggers, like, interviewed me, and one of them struck a chord with, like, Yahoo. And before you know it, like, I remember I was in surgery, not me myself, but I was working in a surgery. And so as soon as I came out, I had like my website was shut down because my story ended up on yahoo.com. And like everyone, like, and their mom was trying to get a hold of me, like old friends from high school, TV producers. My mom was like, "Dr. Oz, someone from his show called trying to get a hold of you." And I was just like, "What is happening?" Like, I had no idea any of this would even take place. So I just want to give people in a better understanding. Like, I had no intention of this thing becoming a thing, but it did, and I felt very fortunate. And so that's kind of the gist of the story. Is like 6 months, no exercise, standard American diet, put on 75 pounds of pure fat in that time. And then it was one of the hardest, most humbling things I've ever done. It totally changed my perspective. It gave me more respect and more empathy for people who are overweight. And, like I said, I used to be judgmental before. After being humbled, I had a better understanding of why people emotionally eat, and why people get stuck in these cycles of self-sabotage, or low self-esteem, and why food becomes the most easily accessible drug to numb ourselves from the emotional pains of life. Because not everyone is going to go on the street and find cocaine and heroin to escape, but food is the easiest way to do that. And you could do it multiple times per day and get these little dopamine hits that, I'll be honest with you, like, the food tastes amazing, and it does make you temporarily feel better. So it is kind of like a mask for the pains that we go through in life, and food is just an easy escape. And so I have a lot of empathy now, and a better understanding of why people get stuck in these cycles, and they do this for years and years. And so that's what changed me as a man, as a human, to better empathize with people that struggle with their weight. And it's not just as simple as, like, willpowering your way out of it. Like, that's telling a drug addict, like, "Hey, just stop doing drugs. Like, it's that easy. Just don't do it." Right. Um, so anyways, I luckily I lost the weight. I got back to fit. Otherwise, this wouldn't really be a conversation. But I did lose the weight, but it was way harder than I thought it was going to be. And like I said, it was very humbling. And that's when the book deal happened. That's when the TV show happened. And that's when I made a career out of this, because it became a thing. Like, that's the thing. I didn't know it was going to become a thing, but it did become a thing. And this was back 12 years ago.
That's amazing, man. I can't even imagine. I do love a good cheeseburger too, so I'm guilty of that. But I guess the question I have is, what is the most
Mhm.
important thing you learned from this experience? What'd you take away?
The biggest thing that I learned is that transformation is not just physical. Like we like to think, weight loss is just macros and calories and exercise and supplements. And like if you do these things, then you'll get this body. And then once you have this body, then you'll be happy in life and all your problems will go away. And we think it's just a physical thing. The problem is we as humans, we're emotional creatures. And so transformation is way more mental and emotional than people think it is. And so people come to me and like, okay, I want to lose weight and like what diet should I do, what exercises should I do. And for me, that's just one small piece of the puzzle, because if you don't understand why you do what you do and you don't do the inner work as well as working out, then yeah, you can willpower your way to lose weight for a period of time or for a season or two or for a year, but most people revert back to their old thought patterns and behaviors because they don't ever change their mindset. And so this is why a lot of people, lose the weight, then gain the weight back multiple times because their mindset never changes. And they don't really figure out why they are the way they are, or why they do what they do. And so for me, my approach to health and fitness now is kind of more of a more holistic approach that tackles people's mental and emotional challenges and doing the inner work instead of just, hey, do this hard workout and this will fix your body. And then your body, now that it's ripped and shredded, then you'll be happy forever. We're trying to fill this, people are trying to fill this void with this body. For example, like if they get this body, then this void that they feel in their life will be filled and might happen temporarily. Like if you were to get $1 million today, you'd probably feel very happy at first, but over the course of months and years, that fades away. And that's not where, like if you're trying to fill that void with some kind of outside source, like a 10% body fat, ripped, shredded body, it lasts for a little bit, but then it goes away. And so what my approach is now is more so helping people on the mental and emotional side, because that's where it sticks. That's where, the change lasts for long, for a lifetime. Honestly, if they learn, how to overcome those mental and emotional hurdles.
I like that. So I actually had another question that kind of piggybacks off that. So you spoke a little bit about some of the things that folks can get addicted to with the food, but no one really
Yeah.
talks about alcohol, especially
Yeah.
after COVID. A lot of people drank during COVID. Can you dive into that a little bit if you actually cut that out and what that process looks like?
Yeah, so I grew up very religious background. I didn't grow up drinking. So alcohol has never really been an issue for me, but I kind of falls into the same category as food. But not everyone that drinks alcohol becomes an alcoholic, and not everybody that eats cake and ice cream becomes morbidly obese and becomes a food addict, right? There's plenty of people that can have cake and ice cream and just be okay with just, occasionally. And there's some people that can drink alcohol and not have to have it every night. The problem is, I think what it comes down to is intention. And this is why one of the practices I use is something called intentional eating. And what I have my clients do is set an intention before they eat. Like, what is your intention with, wanting to eat this food, whether it's cake and ice cream, whether it's, chicken and broccoli, whatever it is, set an intention. And if your intention is to escape the uncomfortable, hard emotions of life, then just be honest with yourself about that. The same goes for alcohol. Like if your intention is to drink by yourself at midnight because you're sad over a breakup or you're, going through financial issues and you're looking to take the edge off, then be honest with yourself about why you're doing that. And if you're doing that more often than not, then most likely it's going to become a problem, whether it's alcohol or drugs or food or sex or porn or social media, whatever it is. Setting an intention changes everything. Because if my intention is, for example, it's not the substance that's the problem. Like I said, it's the intention with the substance. So if your intention is to, like, you guys are going out for a beer with your buddies, you haven't seen each other in months, and it's someone's birthday, and your intention is to have a bonding experience or moment with your boys, that's completely different than drinking yourself till you pass out at midnight, alone in your room because you're going through some hard things in life. That's the biggest difference right there. So whether it's food, alcohol, drugs, the substance isn't the issue. It's the intention behind it. And that's kind of what I help people try and figure out is what is your intention with wanting to eat this cupcake or wanting to eat whatever it is, or drink this or that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Motives and intentionality is like one of the most important things, especially like you were talking, changing the mindset, right? So walk us through for some dads. Let's say we have some dads that might have some addictions that they're suffering from. What would your first steps be to help these dads break these mindsets?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Honestly, the biggest step to overcome any addiction is self-awareness. And there's a good quote that I love by Anthony DeMello, and he says, "What you're aware of, you're in control of, and what you're not aware of is in control of you." And that's so powerful, because until we become aware of why we are the way we are, we're just going to keep repeating these patterns, because the subconscious mind is your autopilot. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Click with Adam Sandler. It's a funny, goofy movie where he just kind of like wants to fast forward through the boring parts of his life, and he just, he's on autopilot. So he's there, but he's not there. And that's how most of us are with when we let the subconscious mind, which is kind of our programming and our autopilot, just kind of do what it does. We're never truly fully present in the moment, and we're never truly aware of why we're doing what we're doing. So that's like mindless eating, right? We're just like eating because the food tastes good. We're like checking our phone as we're stuffing our face with whatever food. We're not truly present with our family or kids. And so the biggest step is self-awareness. So how do you become self-aware? This is, you have to come up with a practice of becoming the observer of your thoughts rather than becoming your thoughts. And so if I could describe like a visual for you guys, is as humans, there's stimulus that happens in our life, right? Like maybe we get into an argument, or maybe we smell food, or some kind of stimulus happens, right? It's a trigger. And if we just respond without any space between, that's like running on autopilot. That's the subconscious mind taking this stimulus and say, okay, this is what we do when this thing happens, when this stressful thing happens, boom, here's the stimulus here's the response that we've always done, right? And you do that, year after year, decade after decade. So like, you're stressed out, you get an argument with your wife, you drink alcohol, or you eat this food, right? Whatever it is you use to escape. The more space you can create between stimulus and response, the more power you have to control how you want to react in that situation. So what are some practices to build self-awareness and to create space between stimulus and response? There's lots of things that work for people. Here's just a list of few of them that have worked for me over the years. And the reason I'm talking about this, you guys, is because going through my divorce, which happened about the same time that I left my religion, pushed me down this path of doing the inner work on myself. And so as I'm talking about this, it's because I've actually done this work, because I needed to figure myself out. And so things like therapy were a huge, you benefit for me to become the observer of my thoughts, and to be less reactive, and to have a push pause between stimulus and response. So talk therapy was great. A life coach I would throw in there as well. Meditation was a huge thing that I didn't grow up doing, because I thought it was very woo woo and just like that's for like monks and stuff like that. But then I started doing it and realizing, wow, this is very powerful. This is a powerful tool to help me become the observer of my thoughts, rather than just attach myself to my thoughts and just be reactive my whole life. So meditation I would throw in there, journaling as well, journaling your thoughts, or journaling about your day to see yourself as you act. Like, okay, this is what happened in this situation. You can kind of observe your life from observer standpoint. That can help out as well. Things like breath work, taking a few deep breaths before you react. Like if your kids spill something, I'm sure a lot of us have yelled at our kids, or like our wife has said something, and like you just instantly get defensive and react. Breath work is great. Getting out in nature, going for a walk, exercising. There's a whole list of things that I would give to dads, but these are just a few of them that help build that space between stimulus and response. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's so fantastic. As Alan Watts says, to be a master of your thoughts and not a slave of them, right? And so that's pretty much the key right there. I love it. Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of like Carl Jung, he says, until you make the subconscious conscious, it will dictate your life, and you'll call it fate. So that's what I'm saying. It's like you got to make the subconscious conscious. And I think 95% of us, we spend 95% of our day in the subconscious mind. 5% of the time we're conscious, like really present and truly aware. So That's huge.
Yeah, I really like how you honed in on intentionality earlier as well, because people will ask us, what does it mean to be a present father? And that's usually my
Mm,
answer. It means to be very intentional about everything you're doing, because in order to take that pause and have the thoughtful intention behind whatever it is you're doing, you have to kind of tune out everything else, observe what it is that's driving you, and make yourself be there in that moment, right? Um,
amen.
so through this whole process of learning not just about fitness and having empathy for your clients, what have you learned that's helped you be a better dad, and kind of what how can you
Mm.
pass that on to other dads out there who can kind of learn from your example?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So kind of like, hopefully you guys are okay with me talking about a little bit about my story. It kind of paints the picture for this journey
Yes.
for me. Like when I went through my divorce and left my religion around the same time, that was like my rock bottom moment. And those were two important factors of my identity and who I was. So I had this huge identity crisis, as you can imagine, going through, being married for 10 years and then having these two big things happen. Like I was at my rock bottom. The thing that pulled me out of that rock bottom was being a dad. Was okay, if I want to show up and give my daughters the best life possible, that's going to require me being the best version of myself. And in order to be the best version of myself, I can't stay stuck in this victim mindset of like, woe is me and like this self-sabotage mode for the rest of my life, because then I will unintentionally pass these patterns of behaviors on to my daughters and they'll suffer because I'm not willing to do the work on myself. And so I think for all the dads out there, you have to at some point go on this self-discovery journey to figure out who you are and why you are the way you are and who you want to become. And I think for me, that was the thing that pulled me out of that dark place, was showing up as the best version of me so that I didn't unintentionally pass these patterns onto my daughters. There's a good quote that I love that says, if you don't heal what hurts you, you're going to bleed on those who didn't cut you. And that's, I think, a lot of parents, moms, dads do this unintentionally because of a lack of self-awareness. They pass these patterns onto their kids because they're not willing to do the inner work on themselves. And that's why things get taught, bad patterns like racism or hate get passed on from generation to generation until someone's willing to break that cycle and do the work on themselves so that they're, the next generation and the next generation don't have to suffer those same patterns. And so for me, that was what really motivated me to do the work. And I think if you're a dad out there and you're struggling, it's easy to do a workout. It's easy to like do a diet in comparison to doing the inner work, going to therapy, admitting that you need help, embracing vulnerability as a strength, because our whole life we've been taught that it's a weakness to be vulnerable, right? We're taught that it's a weakness to show emotion. And I think for me, reading books by Brene Brown, learning about vulnerability have really changed my mindset around that whole thing. Because for me, if I stayed in that mindset, I would be too prideful to do the work on myself and admit it, and admit that I actually needed some help. And so for me, that's where my healing journey started to happen. And so being open to things outside of maybe what you feel comfortable with, and like we talk about in health and fitness all the time, like get out of your comfort zone. The same goes for the mental and emotional stuff we have to do in life too. Get out of your comfort zone. You can still do the hard things, like do some hard workouts and take care of your physical health, because that's a part of it. But that's not the only piece that you need to work on. That's the easy work, in my opinion. The hard work is facing your inner demons and doing the inner work so that you break those patterns. And so, like I said, meditation, therapy, life coaching, journaling, breath work, getting out in nature, letting go of your ego. Like I love Ryan Holiday's books. Ego is the enemy, stillness is the key, the obstacle is the way. These are all really good books to help reshape your mindset. And at the end of the day, if you want to change who you are, it has to come from a place of changing your identity. It can't come from a place of like willpower and discipline only.
Right.
Like you can't just be David Goggins and like yes, some people can, but let's be honest, most people willpower it doesn't work.
Right.
At least for long lasting change.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so
I love the line from Atomic Habits where you don't rise to your potential, you fall to your systems. And that's kind of that
yes,
mindset of like, most of us are just mere mortals, right? We're gonna fall to what we've set in place, and that's the best we're gonna do. And that's fine because that's like you said, like David Goggins and stuff, those people are the exception to the rules, right? So
Who's gonna carry the boats?
yeah,
You don't know me.
You don't know me, son.
we're gonna get Justin going. He's a huge Goggins fan. So, but yeah, I love how candid you are about that, because I think, a lot of people would probably look at you if they only saw you on social media, think, oh, that guy's always had all his stuff together, right? And that's probably the
No.
first thought people have, and it's just not true. No one is that way. We all have something, or something will happen to us that creates kind of that crisis. But yeah, I couldn't agree more that it's the way you think about things. It's intentional words, right? Like, so a great example too from Atomic Habits was, if someone says, well, I'm trying to quit smoking, they're not actually going to quit, because they're saying,
Yeah.
oh, I'm trying to. They've already, in their heads, in the subconscious, they aren't going to break the habit. But if you just say, I'm not a smoker,
Yeah.
there's a lot of power in your self-talk and your words. So back to intention and things like that. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
yeah, just really wanted to jump in on that. But I think Justin's got the next question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to quote Bluey first. The obstacle isn't in the
Yeah.
path; it is the path.
Amen.
So I love that one. But I recently saw you post about conscious fitness.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what that is and how does that apply to fathers?
Yeah, amen. Thanks for letting me talk about that, because that's kind of like my new age approach to health and fitness. We've all seen the typical approach to health and fitness, like, oh, I'm overweight, I gotta change. I just gotta like be disciplined and willpower my way to this new body, and this new body will then I'll be happy, right? And so conscious fitness is kind of what we're talking about here, is taking the mental emotional struggles that people have, and um and understanding the parallels between the physical transformation and the mental and emotional challenges that come with that transformation. And it's about the inner work versus working out and doing those together. And so that's what conscious fitness is. It's learning how to do really, really hard things, but instead of looking at those hard things as a chore or a punishment, when you learn how to operate out of a place of self-love, and you believe that you are worthy of good physical health, mental health, and spiritual health, then those things change from being a chore or a punishment to things that actually, if you're being honest with yourself, feel really good. Maybe not in the moment. Of course, exercise sucks in the moment. Eating chicken and broccoli in the moment isn't as satisfying as eating cake and ice cream in the moment. But the long-term changes that come with that, you have to realize that you're worthy of that. And if you believe you're worthy of that, then you can still use that self-love as motivation to do some really hard things still, but not from a place of punishment anymore. And that's where lasting, fulfilling change happens. And that's what conscious fitness is. It's like if you brought David Goggins and Brene Brown, this ability to push yourself to do really hard physical things, but also on the mental and emotional side that we talked about, but doing it from a place of self-love and worthiness, those two coming together to create a conscious fitness approach where it's not about doing these things as a punishment or a chore, or hating yourself to skinny, if you will. And that's kind of my new age approach to health and fitness that I think will be a more holistic approach, where it kind of ties in the mental and emotional side. So what does that look like? So when I work with people on the conscious fitness side, we're doing exercises, we're eating healthy food, of course, we're doing all the physical things we know we're supposed to do, but then we're incorporating things like breath work, meditation, journaling, gratitude, positive affirmations, the inner work, as well as the working out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you got to have mind, body, and spirit all working together. And side note, you've now given me an inspiration to try and pull together an episode with Brene Brown and David Goggins to teach a course simultaneously. That would be the funniest course ever. They're like polar opposites in terms of like how they motivate
So
people.
true, but I would love to see them come together at some point.
I bet they can figure it out, but that'd be a funny sight. Sorry to take us off course. Brandon, bring us back.
That's okay.
Yeah, sure. So we're talking about all the benefits of fitness and health, and why we're doing fitness for health, right? But as far as like the bad things that you saw specifically when you were getting unhealthy and you were getting fat, maybe can you elaborate and compare and contrast between the two? Like, what was something that was really surprising when you were fat? That you really wanted to get back to being fit, right? Can you elaborate some of that? Because I think as dads, like you said, it's an investment long term for us to be the healthiest that we can be, and like cholesterol and blood work and stuff catches up with us. I mean, I'm healthy, but mine even catches up with me, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, 100%. And this is the thing. It's really hard to be happy and fulfilled in life if you don't have good physical health. So that's what I'm trying to get across. And I'll give you a specific example of my journey. But like, if you're trying to be the best dad possible, you do have to take care of your physical health. That doesn't mean you need to be you need to have a six pack and be shredded. Like that's extreme. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. Like more isn't always better with physical fitness and health. Like not everyone needs to be like a Spartan, right? But I think taking care of your physical health is super important to show up the best version of you. Because I'll give you a specific example. When I was doing my second Fit to Fat to Fit journey in 2020, I was already divorced at this time. My daughters were like 8 and 10. I was in a relationship with my girlfriend of 2 years, and we went through a really bad breakup in the middle of my Fit to Fat to Fit journey, right? And before, I was eating the food because I was trying to gain the weight and it's part of the journey. Fast forward to the breakup, I was like already 50 pounds heavier. And now I was eating the food to numb the pain of feeling lonely and sad and depressed from the breakup. And something shifted in me where I realized why people get stuck in these cycles. Because if you go through a really hard life situation and food becomes your medicine, food becomes your escape in that situation, you create a vicious cycle of dependency where you constantly, anytime you feel the pain, anytime you feel the uncomfortable emotions, it's so easy just to be like, you know what, DoorDash some food, or like, oh, this Ben and Jerry's ice cream is like so good, or this glass of wine, or this glass of whiskey, whatever it is, like whatever you're drinking or eating, like it's so easy to gravitate towards that. And I think the other thing is like what I realized was like eating that food, living that lifestyle in the moment feels great. Like it really does. But what you don't realize is that how that's going to affect you as a man, as a dad, as an employee, as a business owner, whatever it is, because eating that food, living that unhealthy lifestyle affects your sleep. And when your sleep is off, your hormones are off. And so your testosterone level takes a dip. Your cortisol is through the roof all day long. So you're constantly exhausted. You're constantly on edge. Your ability to handle stress is severely diminished. And so you are more reactive. You're not able to create space between stimulus and response. And that makes you not the best version of you, so that when you show up in certain situations, you are more reactive and you are more prone to just running on autopilot. And that's why like I'm such a proponent of like taking care of your physical health, not to look a certain way, but to become the best version of you, so that those around you, your family, can have the best version of you. But if you're not taking care of your physical health, that's a perfect example of like, okay, well, I eat this way and I still try and, show up the best I can. But dude, try and show up. Like if anyone's had a newborn baby and you're sleep deprived, like let's be honest, like you're in survival mode. Like you're not the best version of you. You're,
Exactly.
I think we all can agree that like you're not. And so living this type of unhealthy sedentary lifestyle, eating all this junk food, um, does take a toll on your mental and emotional health. And this is why all the dads out there need to understand that it's not just about like eating this way to look a certain way. You're eating this way for your mental health and for your family's mental health too, because you will be less reactive if you're taking care of your physical health and if you're sleep deprived.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I've always kind of just said that like looking good naked is just one of the added benefits of being fit. It's not the whole goal. Cause like you said earlier, that, that maybe for someone that's something they chase. They've never been fit before. So like, they climb that peak for the first time and they're like, yeah, but then, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, it's kind of like, ooh, it lost its, magic. Right. But,
Yeah.
yeah, I love too, how just clear you were about, the mental aspects of it. And that was kind of an additional question too. That was just
Mhm.
the first time around. So the second time you had the breakup, even the first time around,
Hmm.
how hard was that for you to, like, I can only imagine that your confidence just felt completely shattered, because you were used to looking fit. And so can you just
Yeah.
talk us through a little bit of kind of the mind games that were going on? Because I think men especially diminish the thoughts we have in our head. Like, oh, I'll just tough it out, or I'll just get over it. And it's like, okay, yeah, that doesn't work,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah, so the first time I did it, it really was a huge identity crisis for me, where I'll be totally honest. I freaked out like being overweight for the first time because my whole identity was created around my body image. So my body image was my self-image. And a lot of people do this, whether you're in shape or whether you're out of shape, you create your body image as your self-image. And if you don't learn how to separate those two, you're kind of setting yourself up for an identity crisis at some point because your body will not always look the same. I'm 42, you guys look like you're in your 30s. Like, I'm sure you've kind of aged and you've realized like, hey, like I don't look the same as I used to. So if you don't learn how to separate your body image from your self-image, you will have an identity crisis, which is what happened to me. When I was like 20 pounds overweight, I wanted to go up to people in public and explain to them like, hey, I'm doing this experiment. Like, here's my before picture. This is what I normally look like. I'm a healthy person, and I wouldn't take my shirt off in public the first time, because I hadn't really done that inner work on myself. I didn't really understand what that was. I didn't have that level of self awareness at the time, but it really did affect me, in my first marriage, where like I was so uncomfortable being overweight. Like, I would complain to my wife all the time, and she would remind me like, you chose to do this, like you signed up for this, and so this is part of the process. But it was very humbling, but it taught me a lot about how my identity was kind of created around my body image. Like, I was Drew the fit guy in my mind for so long. I didn't really know who I was as this overweight person, and so I didn't really embrace it. Fast forward to the second time when I did it, I rocked the dad bod totally fine. Like, I had done the inner work on myself, and I felt more comfortable taking my shirt off because I knew like our bodies are temporary, you guys. Like, we get so stuck thinking our current situation is our final destination. And so if we are overweight, we tend to think like, oh, I'm always going to be stuck this way. But you're not. Like, you really can change your life and your body. Your body doesn't always need to be stuck in this like this final form. Like, it's very changeable and flexible if you focus on it, right? So anyways, that's the only advice I would give to the men out there, is just to realize that your current situation is not your final destination. And you don't really need, like I said, you don't really need to make, like, not everyone's priority is to have a six pack and be shredded. Like, I understand, like, a lot of people want to be a good husband and they want to be a successful businessman or whatever it is. And that doesn't require them to look a certain way. Like, in our society, we really don't need like as much, muscle as maybe like, back in the day with manual labor jobs. And we just don't like, the way our society is changing. We use our minds more than our bodies. And so I just want to give men permission to realize that, like, taking care of your physical health doesn't mean you need to look like an Instagram model at the end of the day. Like, it can look different. Every body looks different for each person on what their version of healthy is. And I'll be the first to say that. Like, I don't think everyone needs to have the same looking body and they have to be ripped and shredded in order to be accepted by society. Even though some people might value you more if you look a certain way, but just, I would say, just don't buy into that myth and just become the best version of you that you possibly can, whatever that looks like.
You could kind of chase that same moving goalpost in anything, right? Oh, just make more money, or just, be smarter, or whatever. You could get caught on that exact same loop in anything. It's
Yeah.
just, I think people with fitness somehow, because it's the outward appearance to everyone else, everyone sees it, so it's somehow a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Justin, I know you've got kind of the question teed up that's for every guest. So go ahead
Yeah,
and take this
man.
one away.
So it's our favorite question. We ask it to every dad that comes on.
Sure.
But what is a core memory or just a story that you have to share about fatherhood that you've had with your family that just really resonates with you?
Man, that's a really good question. So I think we talked a little bit about this before the podcast started, but being a girl dad, um, when my girls were younger, um, life was so different when they were little, and this has taught me a lot of life lessons, especially about identity. When they were little, those were probably the best years of my life. Like, those were the funnest times to be like this girl dad, where my daughters like loved hanging out with me. We did so many fun trips together. We would have so many core memories, whether it was like, every Sunday night we'd watch Sunday night football and then make them pizza. Um, or we went and watched all the Star Wars movies, like all of them, and they like fell in love with the characters and like got into the movies. It was just really fun and really cute to do that with them. And I think those were some really fun core memories as well. But then also like doing holidays together with like with their mom. I'm very fortunate to have a good relationship with their mom still, and we co-parent really well. And I would say one of the funnest memories that I've had was her and her husband took them to Japan for Christmas one year, and I was like, shoot, I don't want to be alone on Christmas. I was like, hey, would you guys be okay if I flew myself out to Japan, got my own hotel, and then just like, showed up on Christmas morning and surprised them? And they were like, yeah, we'll totally help you. We'll make it a surprise. It'll be this really cool thing. And the girls will like be so shocked. And so like we did it. We set it up to where like they were about to open presents, and they were like, oh, I wish dad was here. And then like this knock on the door happens and they answer it and they start screaming and yelling. And we got it on video. It was like best Christmas I've ever had. Probably the best Christmas ever. And it's really, really cool to create memories like that. Now that my girls are older, they're 12 and 14. They're kind of in this phase of life
Good
where they
luck.
just, yeah, yeah, they just don't need me anymore. They push me away. And like, I went through a really hard time with letting go of that identity of this dad that like had so much fun with them, to where now it's like, oh shoot, my job is to like they grow up and then they're eventually going to leave me. And I had this huge realization, like, man, that the like those days are kind of over. And that was a really hard pill to swallow. So any dads out there, same kind of thing. When you get attached to this identity, you're kind of setting yourself up for an identity crisis at some point. And so, anyways, that's the lesson that I learned from that, is just to like be as present as possible in every single moment, because like this life goes by so fast, and those like memories will always be there. But at the same time, like if you're on autopilot during that time, you miss out on so much beauty of like making those memories. Because yeah, man, it's crazy how fast that time went. And now it's in a different phase of life, and I'm trying to find the beauty in this phase of like, they don't need me, so giving them space, and that's hard. But it comes with the territory of being a parent.
Yeah, that's it's a little scary because I'm only a few years behind. My daughter's 8, so I'm like, oh man, that's coming quick. It kind of sucks
Yeah,
to
it
hear that,
does,
but
man.
no, I couldn't agree more. We just gotta really just treasure every moment as it happens, because it might be the last one. And so thanks for sharing those. That's beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful stories. I wanted to talk a little bit about co-parenting. I think it's something
sure.
that um, is obviously a big challenge, and I think most people get it wrong. It sounds like you have a pretty good situation going, and so um, there's just straight up, there's a lot of fathers out there who have divorces, and
Yeah.
it's a complicated issue in our country, to say the least. So, what is some of the things that you've discovered that work well, and just advice for both parents in those situations, to
Yeah.
work out co-parenting? Because at the end of the day, you want to set aside your differences for your children.
Yeah. And it's so hard because I see so many other friends of mine that have gone through divorces where it does get ugly, unfortunately. And at the end of the day, the kids are the ones that end up suffering the most. And so the only advice I would give to people is to do the inner work on themselves and hope that the other person is going to do the work on themselves as well, so that they can give the best life to the kids as possible. But unfortunately, ego gets in the way. And that's why I read that book, Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, and it definitely helped change my perspective. Like, oh, I see where my ego gets involved. And even though this person did this thing to me, or I did this thing to them, like you want to, like some people, they want to make the other person suffer. And so sometimes kids get caught in the they get caught in the middle of these two sides kind of combating with each other, and they use the kids as a form of punishment. And it breaks my heart because they think that they're doing this thing to this person, but they're ended up hurting the kid more than anything else. And so luckily, when we did divorce, we kind of we both were committed to doing the work on ourselves so that our kids didn't have to suffer. And I think that's the pill that you have to swallow at some point if you really want to give your kids the best life. It's like, all right, I'm going to do the work on myself. Hopefully this other person will do the work on themselves as well, but that's not always the case. Like you can't control the other person, you can only control you. And I think if you show up and do the work, hopefully you're the example in that situation, and hopefully the other person will kind of see the importance of doing the work on themselves as well, and realizing that when they're trying to hurt you, they're hurting the kids. And luckily when we divorced, we kind of we didn't get divorced in the middle of our pain. I think that was a blessing. We kind of tried to work through the pain and went to counseling, went to therapy, did the work on ourselves, and eventually I met this life coach, and she changed my life, man. She was the first person to teach me that I was lovable. And I think once that changed for me, how I saw my ex-wife change. And this is why it's so important to do the work on yourself, because everything's a mirror of how you see you. Everything's a mirror of your relationship with yourself. And so if you hate yourself, you judge yourself, you belittle yourself, you beat yourself down, guess what? You're going to do that to other people. You're going to treat people the same way you treat yourself. And so that's why I think if you learn how to operate at a place of self-love, you'll learn how to love other people. If you can have empathy for yourself, it's easier to have empathy for other people. So yeah, I think that's I think that's the most important thing at the end of the day is that aspect of it. But like I said, it's out of your control whether that person does the work or not. But at the end of the day, I think, like I said, all you can do is work on you for yourself and for other people.
Well, thanks, Drew, for being candid about your situation, and
Yeah.
good words of wisdom, I think, for anyone in that situation. And obviously, even if you're staying married, work on yourself to show up best for your kids. It's not just for people in divorce situations, but
Yeah. Amen.
thank you for that. Brandon, I think you've got one.
Yeah, experience has been a great teacher for you, it seems. And you touched on the transition of chapters for your kids as they got older. But one of the things I'd like to ask is, what is something you wish that you would have known before you became a father? Let's go a little bit further back, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think this whole idea of identity and the importance of the fluidity of life and how we can shift and change our identities, and not being stuck in that mindset of think I'm always going to think this way, and being flexible with your thinking. And one thing that I did do before I had kids was I read this book called, because I knew I was having a daughter, it's called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And that really opened up my eyes to the importance of being a girl dad, and how valuable that relationship is between a father and a daughter. Daughters learn how to love from their moms, but they learn how to be loved from their dads. And that's where the switch flipped for me.
Yes.
But yeah, I think ultimately self-love and my relationship with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really good book called The Conscious Parent. I would highly recommend that book for any parent out there. It's not too late, but yeah, if I would have read that before, and if I would have done this work before, I kind of wish I could go back and reparent how I am now. It would have changed everything, but you can't. And experiences, happen to shape our beliefs a certain way, and that's how we change as humans. So, anyways.
Yeah, we are big fans of the Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters book. We actually did an episode on that book when we were just getting started, specifically, 'cause I think that's an absolute requirement for soon-to-be girl dads.
Yes.
Yes.
But there's also a great one for all dads called Hero by the same author, Dr. Meg Meeker. That's a great one too. But that's good, man. Yeah, I wish I would have. I wish I could travel back in time and shake my former self and hand him the book and be like, read this now. So
Amen.
unfortunately we can't do that. So Drew, I know we're coming to time here, so I wanted to give you a minute to allow you to kind of tell everyone where they can find you, what the best places are to find you, and potentially if they want to be your client, how does that whole process go?
Yeah, so right now everything's super simple. It's streamlined. It's my website, my podcast, my book, my social media handles are all fit #2 fit. Yeah, and that's the best way to get a hold of me, is just like, hit me up on Instagram. Probably that's when I respond to the most. But really appreciate you guys having me on. Love your work. Love what you guys are doing. And I think this is very important work in this world. I think dads can make a bigger difference than they think, and I think learning how to break the cycle is hard work, but it's worth it in the end. So
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate that. And so for those who are watching on YouTube, you can here's his Instagram, fit to fat to fit. And man, look at this. Oh, it's a video. Never mind. I was trying to get the just look at that thumbnail. It's insane how it's like
yeah,
you don't even look like the same guy. It's nuts.
that's okay.
It's amazing, man. Well, I guess before we close, any final thoughts or anything that we didn't address, that last piece of advice from Drew for dads out there?
No, I think I think we touched on all of it, but just kind of reiterating everything. Like, working is just as important as working out. I know it's freaking hard to step into the arena and embrace vulnerability as a strength, but having been on both sides of it, I can tell you it's 100% worth it, even though it's scary to make that jump, to make that leap of faith. At the end of the day, it's so refreshing not to have to wear a mask anymore, to take the mask off, do the inner work, and honestly just learn how to love yourself, because if you do that, the way you show up in this world is so different, and your kids are going to see that, and that's what you'll be able to pass on to them. So anyways, thank you guys for letting me speak my truth, and yeah, this was very enjoyable for me, so thank you.
Yeah, Drew, it was a true pleasure.
Sure.
It's great to meet you, man. And for every dad out there, let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood together. We'll see you in the next episode.
Amen.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify to catch all of our amazing episodes. We will see you in the next one.